Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another 50 years in polygamy chapter read. I'm going to try to get as much of this out as I possibly can. I feel like I'm about to have sinus issues. Ugh, this up and down weather isn't helping me. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. It helps the channel. Let's get started. Chapter 22, Courtship and a Sister Wives, 1977 to 1978. Kenneth told Mark Diane and her almost 2-year-old little girl to move back to her mother's house. Dad's concerns had been accurate. Diane's soon-to-be ex-husband's first wife was openly favored as his soulmate, while Diane was relegated to concubine. In her short marriage, she had to ask her sister wife for any privilege for food items, personal needs, and apparel. She had to get permission to sleep with her husband and to visit her family. Often the first wife refused Diane's request. Isn't it interesting that we're being told here that he had a favorite when a lot of times we're told that they are created as equal, that they're seen as equal, but whether they want to admit it or not, sometimes they do show favoritism. And I think we've seen that in some families that we've seen on TV, like the Browns. But let's continue. When Mark told me about the situation, I was dejected. If you would have noticed and cared for Diane a few years ago when she was crazy about you, she wouldn't have gone through all that grief. Mark rarely agreed. Shortly after Diane's priesthood release, a divorce granted only under certain circumstances, Mark asked Diane's father if we could court her. Oh, so now that she's divorced, you want to court her? That's weird. Up to that point, the heartache of courting another woman was caused by my imagination. Now it was haunting. For nearly 4 months, Mark spent every other night at Diane's mother's house with Diane. Often he wouldn't return until after 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Though I dearly loved Diane and believed she belonged in our family, I fought off the devil's constant torments by keeping extremely busy. I was scared to death of what would happen if I let my imagination haunt me even more. Now and then I had no control over my thoughts. I envisioned Mark and Diane kissing and fondling each other the way Norma had described what she and her married fiance had done. No, I screamed at myself. Stop it. Don't allow yourself to believe for 1 second either of them will let things get out of hand. To retain my sanity, I accomplished a dozen more things and crossed them off my never-ending to-do list. When things got to be too much and I was already feeling like an insane plural wife, I timidly complained to Mark. I thought it was wrong for him to spend so much time, especially alone time, with Diane before they were married. Even if it was at her parents' home, he of course disagreed. She needs me there to reassure her. After the rejection she felt from me and her ex-husband's crap, she needs to feel secure. How could I dispute that? Because you shouldn't neglect your household while trying to court that other woman if that's what he's doing, especially since he didn't want her at first. One evening in the fall, I was finally invited to dinner by Diane's mother. After an absolutely delicious meal with Diane's parents, Mark, Diane, and I retreated to the basement family room to watch a movie. Mark claimed the huge reclining chair while Diane and I sat on a nearby sofa. I felt like a bolt of electricity pierced through my heart when I returned from a bathroom break and saw Diane, like a bear cub, snuggled up in Mark's lap, wrapped in his arms and kissing his neck. Oh, wow. They're not even married yet. Oh, wow. I thought she was going to say that she felt a bolt of electricity, like the way that all the rest of them have tried to describe this feeling they got when they thought somebody was supposed to be in her family. But she's talking about the pain of seeing this girl that's interested in her husband all snuggled up with him. And the disrespect that was when you knew she was still there, and that's what you did. Couldn't be me. I thought I might black out from the horrendous pain filling me from head to toe. All my worries and concerns were warranted. Like a caged lioness, my grief wanted to be set free, as if aggression might be the only way I could stay alive. Instead, I slumped down on the sofa behind them, while my whole body quaked inside. Images of everything I believed they'd been doing for months on end filled my head. And they probably were. If they felt comfortable enough to do that with her just going to the bathroom, imagine what they were doing. I wanted to shove the reclining chair they were sitting in over backwards. I wanted to have the strength to make Mark so angry he would pummel me senseless to make me forget my heartache. Silently, I commanded my heart to stop thrashing around in my chest and swore I wouldn't shed a single tear. I wasn't supposed to feel like this. Not one plural wife ever warned me about this brutal pain. I had no idea such torment existed. The two lovebirds were totally oblivious to anything but the movie in front of them and themselves while I was dying. I quickly wandered upstairs to the landing and out of the front door. When I caught my breath in the cold night air, I took off on a dead run. I ran for blocks until I fell down. Then I got up and ran some more. Wow, she's really heartbroken about this. At the time, it didn't matter how far I went, if I ever stopped, or if I'd ever returned. After running away and then slowly walking back to Diane's house, I climbed into our freezing cold car to wait. I had no idea how long I'd been gone or if I was even missed. All I knew was the shame I felt for acting out, for not being in control. Oh, no, girl. So you're hurting. And because you're hurting, because of what this man is doing, because they're made to believe they're supposed to keep sweet, here she is beating up herself for having legitimate feelings. All I knew was the shame I felt for acting out, for not being in control, and for letting my jealousy get out of hand. I didn't want to see Diane right then, and I certainly did not want her to see me. On the way home, Mark said, "You know I love you, Sophia, more than anyone and anything in the whole world. I wouldn't be courting Diane if you hadn't encouraged me to. You know I never wanted to hurt you." He's a freaking liar. Because if you really felt that way, then why couldn't you tell Diane not right now when you knew that your wife was sitting right there and she could probably walk in on y'all at any moment? You didn't care. After a long period of silence, I finally said in anguish, "Just because I encouraged you to court Diane doesn't mean you two are justified in making out with each other. You don't have a right to break the rules, nor does it mean I shouldn't or won't be in turmoil about your damn hurtful choices." Mark apologized for days while my imagination ran wild, stirring raw emotions and lack of trust like my mother's torment. I thought I would plunge into the depths of hell if I didn't get a handle on myself. Though it felt quite impossible, I drove myself into good behavior, more work, more crafts, more service. Because God forbid she actually embraced the feelings that she was having about the hurt and the pain and the anguish of her man doing what he did and him picking another when she just wanted it to be her and him. A couple of weeks before Valentine's Day, Mark showed me the engagement ring he intended to present to Diane while he proposed. I hope he didn't go get this girl some big behind rock when she got an old man's ring that he left in the laundry bag. See, y'all, I wouldn't be made for this. I wouldn't be cut out for this because I would be comparing things left and right. I know me. I got to be honest. Can't lie about it. I would. It was exquisite, and I was happy for her. She deserved Mark's love, kindness, affection, and the gorgeous ring. But at the same time, I felt shattered. He hadn't bought me a ring when we became engaged. Rings are no big deal, he had told me repeatedly. For 3 years after our marriage, while I asked him for it, hinted at, and practically had to beg him for a diamond wedding ring, his comments were always the same. "Come on, Sophia. Rings are important. It's love that makes a good marriage, not a ring. Why isn't your gold band good enough? Don't you like it? Besides, we can't afford it." Even more hurtful, the wedding engagement ensemble he bought for Diane without discussing it with me also had small diamonds and rubies. It looked way too much like the rings Mark had finally bought me for our 3rd anniversary. See, that's what I'm saying. She's doing what I would do. She's comparing. The reason he used for why he couldn't or wouldn't get me a wedding ring when we were first engaged once again challenged my value and worth to him. I slipped away to Swedes, my newfound safe house. He was my friend, my Papa Bear next door. With his help, I could usually talk myself into feeling rational again. We are no more financially stable now than we were then. I cried to him. It hurt so darn much that he's showing her more love and consideration than he did me. It seems he didn't care enough about me when we got engaged to forfeit something of value to get me an engagement ring. At some point, I had to calm down and get the spirit of the Lord back. Mark tries every day to be a better person, I told him. As he said, I'm sure his actions were not meant to be insulting or hurtful to you. I'm sure his intentions were to do the right thing this time around. I was the practice run. My poor husband. I've got to straighten up and get back to being a well-behaved wife. Oh, Lord. A week or so before the wedding, Diane took me into her bedroom to show off the teddies and negligee she purchased for her honeymoon with my husband. Okay, I know that I said before that I don't understand why these women act so prudish about certain things, but I personally, if I were in that situation, wouldn't want to see the negligee that the woman that is about to marry my wife is gonna wear. Kind of seems like she's rubbing it in her face, which has me looking at Diane sideways, especially since Diane already was previously the second wife, I believe, and she was treated the way that she was treated. You think that she would have a little bit more consideration for Sophia, but it seems like she doesn't. I dutifully smiled and approved of her evening wear, all the while wondering how she could be so cruel, exactly, and so insensitive. If she loved and cared about me, why would she hurt me so much? I felt like she wanted to prove a point, as if to say, I am here now, he loves me, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I do feel like she was rubbing it in her face. I do. Y'all tell me, do you feel like Diane was rubbing that in her face? Because I do. Diane's sister, my friend Val, who already given my brother Charles another wife, told me, you can't be alone on their wedding night, Sophia. We're going to have a sleepover, play games, and eat junk food until we're sick. 1 week later, Diane handed me an invitation to my husband's and her wedding celebration. Attached was this note. Dear Sophia, thank you so much for your love and friendship. You're a very special person, and I'm thankful to you for letting me be a part of your family. I love you and hope I never do anything to hurt you. Love, Diane. That seems so sweet. Diane, I'm still looking at you like I don't trust you, girl, because how could you do what you did? I just don't. We'll see. I could be wrong. You all tell me what you think. Do we trust Diane? Do we? 2 nights before the nuptials were to take place, I forced myself to hide my resentful and jealous feelings. I smiled graciously and treated myself sadistically. Why? Mark and Diane flirted back and forth while the three of us set up and put sheets on their brand new king bed. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. The three of us put sheets on their brand new king-size bed in the master bedroom just below mine. Why is she helping them put sheets on their bed? The two of them don't know how to make a bed by themselves. They need a third person to help make the bed. It seems like she is... Diane's room was the same one my sister Francine and William had shared just over a year ago. At the wedding, guests sat in our living room facing us. Dad instructed me to stand on Mark's right side and Diane to stand next to me. Facing the three of us, Dad performed the plural wedding ceremony. At one point, turning his long, drawn-out ritual, he asked, are you, Sophia, willing to stand as Sarah, biblical Sarah, who gave her servant Hagar to her husband Abraham to bear his children, and gave Sister Diane to your husband as his wife for time and all eternity? And Sarah was miserable. Okay. If you're willing, please manifest your approval by placing Diane's right hand within the right hand of your husband. I ignored the searing pain in my stomach. No matter how much it hurt, I forced a thankful, gracious smile because I believe with all my heart the ceremonial sacrifice was necessary for our salvation. That was my righteous womanly duty. I placed Diane's small hand in Mark's hand. Why do the women always have to be the ones who have to take the step and be in the pain and be sweet and da 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 da. Then I stepped back next to his left side while Diane took her place on his right side. To appear stronger, I gave him a peck on the cheek and stepped back into my place to his left. The rest of the day, my thoughts were somewhere deep inside, where I portrayed the personification of a token first wife. I remember watching my husband and his pretty young bride wave goodbye, heading off on their honeymoon. Of course, I never had a honeymoon. See, it's just thing after thing. I quickly wiped the tears from my eyes so no one would see them. Val and I watched a comedy and talked about the blessings of that life-altering day and everything else under the sun. Then we climbed into my bed and talked some more. After she fell asleep, I grieved in total silence, not wanting her to know of my agony. I couldn't let her know I wasn't as good of a first wife as she must have been with my brother Charles was justified in a new love affair with his beautiful new bride, his second wife. I feel like part of the problem with a lot of this is a lot of these women are never completely truthful with how they're feeling, the anguish and the things of that nature. So then when it's their turn, they don't have anyone to turn to because everybody is so busy keeping sweet and not voicing their true feelings. My stomach was in knots as I kept hearing Mark's words of passion, the ones he had so freely shared in our lovemaking for the past 8 years, expressions from me only. I trembled inside with nausea and anger while I imagined his and Diane's bodies intertwined, pulsating in the sensual rhythm, not just tonight on their romantic honeymoon, but in the morning, again and again for the rest of our lives. I knew from that day forward the overpowering bond he and I had shared in our lovemaking would never again be the same. Why had I ever agreed to do this? It felt like my heart was being torn out of my chest. The torture wouldn't stop. In the middle of the night, I woke to the sounds of Mark and Diane's heavy breathing in a far-off motel room. How can he do this to me, to us? Those torturous feelings ripped at my heart like he was cheating on me. He's not cheating, Sophia. You know this is the way of God. You know this is what he intended it to be. I heard my mother's words in my head. Halt these evil whispers from Satan's imps. They will stop at nothing to destroy you. Satan wants you to feel these repulsive, painful feelings so you'll give into them and fall from the graces of God. Stop now. Command them in the name of Jesus Christ to stop before they destroy you. I reached for the medicine box in the hall closet. Through swollen eyes, I searched for the valerian roots capsules. I knew 4 of them would make me sick to my stomach, but it would help sedate my grief. Their atrocious smell and bitter taste gagged me. In between more outbursts of tears, I sang a few gospel hymns until I fell asleep. I really, really, really appreciate her honesty in this book, because a lot of them try to make it seem like this isn't a thing. Oh, I felt a little bit jealous. I was a little worried. I just, no, your man is having relations and being intimate with another person, and this isn't really what you want, but this religion is telling you this is what you have to do. You're in pain. Nearly every woman knows a husband's wife or wives are observed and scrutinized when a new one enters the family. It's like a brutal but necessary ritual polygamous women unwittingly thrive on. Either way, the older and previous wives get to be the theme of everyone's scrutiny and gossip after their husband's most recent nuptials. Oh, she's such a sweet wife. Look how kind and loving she is while her husband's attentions are in a pretty young girl. Well, how about that? She's doing great. We didn't think she'd be. How can she put up with that? Or it might be, good grief, does she ever need our prayers and help? Oh dear, she's awful to her poor husband and his sweet new wife. Val's mother had taught her well how to deal with this psychoanalysis. The day after the wedding, my dear friend tried to help me save face with my newlywed partners and with the judgmental blather I would also have to undergo. Val couldn't help but notice, because if you were crying all night, my puffy, swollen eyes. She must have known I cried most of the night, but she didn't say a word. Before she left, she reminded me to practice everything I would say and do when Mark and Diane returned, as well as for the next few days and weeks and months, especially in public. I'm telling you, this way is better than looking and acting the way you may really feel inside, thou said. She advised me to practice and to visualize over and over again until I had my gracious words and actions memorized. I should plan my actions, my hugs and kisses, every step and every word. She promised it would help me feel better about myself and help me keep my dignity intact. During the 5 days after Mark and Diane's wedding, I felt as if I accomplished a year's worth of work and play to keep myself distracted. My little boys and I watched more VHS Disney movies and went to the park and friends' homes more than in any few months before. When Mark and Diane returned, I flawlessly performed my routine. I said all the words and carried out all the actions I visualized and rehearsed 100 times over, just like a perfectly programmed robot. I did so well, I actually believed every single thing I said and did. I felt I'd passed my test with honors. Act as if, and it shall come to pass. With my hugs, kisses, thoughts of missing them, telling them I was glad they were home, all the sweet, kind, gooey stuff I was sure Mark, Val, my mother, and even God must have been very proud of me. Mark stayed with me the night he and Diane returned from their honeymoon. Without a word, he and I held each other tight until morning. While he was asleep, I wondered if Diane was also. In the crevices of my mind, I saw them naked, holding each other. Stop, Sophia. Don't ever let yourself go there ever again, I demand. Think of other things, of happy thoughts, of kids. You know Mark loves you. He's right here to prove it to you. You should be happy now. This is what you wanted. This is what God wanted. And he expects you to be happy and endure to the end. Be proud. You and your family are finally on your way to the highest glory of heaven, the celestial kingdom. A couple weeks later, around midnight, I woke up to thumping noises and whispering voices. Please, God, don't let this be what it sounds like. I heard myself cry out under my breath. Get up, I told myself. Go in the front room and sleep on the couch. The obvious noises got louder, goodness gracious, until I wished I could jump up and down on the floor, flush the toilet 500 times, break windows, and die. Then it got quiet. Thank God I was wrong. They don't enjoy sex together. They never do. Just go back to sleep, Sophia, I thought. Then, wondering if I'd been hearing things or if I was going crazy, I got on the floor and put my ear against the furnace vent. The few minutes of tall noises gave me a vivid picture that knocked the breath out of me and made me dizzy. Somehow, I dragged my limp body over to my bedroom door, down the hall, and to the kitchen. Get the knife, Sophia, I heard a voice say. You might as well die now. Just get the knife before you pass out. I reached for the butcher knife in the cupboard above the stove. It was there. Thank God. Now all it will take is one swift blow. The fact that this is all that she thought about, and why y'all gotta be so loud? You know the girl's in there. See, this is, anyway. The voices told me again. The stab can't possibly hurt more than you already do. Do it, Sophia. Go ahead and shove it into your heart, deep and fast. Then your pain will be forever obliterated. Do it. Do it. Do it. I pressed the end of the blade to my chest until it indented my dark blue nightshirt and burned against my skin. One swift, heavy blow, that's all it will take. I drew the knife a foot or two away from my chest, ready for the plunge. Suddenly, I heard, I'm going to call him Skylar, you guys, because that's what a lot of us think his name is in the comment section. Skylar cry out. It's now or never, the voice warned. If you don't kill yourself now, you never will, and you'll have to deal with this pain for the rest of your life. My baby's cries became louder and more demanding. I quietly set the knife back on top of the fridge, feeling guilty and grateful I hadn't been caught with it. When I reached Skylar's crib, I thank God for my precious little sons, for Sky's loud cries, for his precious smile and his infant arms that reached out to me when my soul came back from him. And it does say SKY, so I think y'all are right. I fixed his bottle and held him tight in the front room rocking chair. My endless tears burned my eyes raw. I went through the scenario of my temporary madness as if watching a movie. Was I really going to end my life and lose my children because of my jealousy over God's principle of plural marriage? How could I have been so wicked? I knew then I'd never end my life. I would leave Mark if I had to before I would abandon my children over jealousy because of another woman. In the morning, I woke with Sky's little body curled up next to mine. Could he ever comprehend my love for him? Would he someday realize I decided to stay in his life, to give birth to him, and to raise him with my other children? When I heard his cries, I once again chose to stay for him, Jake, Alan, and the rest of the children I knew I would have with Mark. Whew, that was a heavy chapter. We're going to keep going. But that was a heavy chapter. Y'all, what y'all think of that chapter? What do you guys think of the fact that she heard them? Chapter 23. Nothing sacred in this. 1978 to 1979. Mark's adoration and affection wasn't only shown in all of the love-making we enjoy, but also in his kindness towards me. We've been spending so much playtime together, I tried to deceive myself into thinking he wasn't having any fun with Diane. As long as I kept busy ignoring anything and everything that looked or sounded suspicious, I was feeling I could survive our new lifestyle. As is customary among most polygamous families, Mark's evenings were divided between his wives. Every other night he was with me, and every other night he was with Diane. A few months after she got settled downstairs, she asked me if we could split Mark's clothes between the two of us. Before I answered her, my mischievous mind got the best of me. Since I was already sharing him, my time, our food, his clothing, and everything else with Diane, including his genitals, I pictured myself with a pair of scissors, crazily hacking his underwear right down the middle from belly button to crotch and back up the crack. There now, I'd snap at Diane. You can have all the right sides and I'll take all the left sides. Then Mark can hang out with either one of us. Those thoughts made me laugh so hard my face turned red and my eyes watered. Diane started to chuckle at my giggle, even though she had no idea what was so funny to me. While Mark was at work, we went through all of his clothes, like two young girls picking out their favorite pieces of candy. We took turns choosing his shirts. We started with the best looking ones and then worked our way down to his grimy old work shirts. Then we did the same thing with his pants, underwear, and socks. That's kind of weird to me. Like, tell him to do it. Why are they doing it? Anyway. Once we each had a pile of Mark's clothes in front of us, we marked our initials on the label inside as if his clothing were ours to disperse and claim. Exactly. It's weird. You should have asked me first, Mark yelled when he realized his closet space in our room was half empty. You're right, I said, but Diane needs to feel like your wife as well, and this will help her feel. I don't give a crap about how she feels about this. Mark cut me off. Those are my clothes, not yours or Diane's. I want my things in one place where I know where they are and what I have. I know that, but Diane wants to be able to wash and iron your shirts and to have some of your things in her closet and in her drawers too. She wants to be, that's just tough, Sophia. I can't believe you agreed to this. You need to get my stuff back up here. So why is the man, couldn't you tell Diane that you didn't want to do that? Why you make Sophia go and say it? See? Listen, Mark, I really didn't want to do that either, and we should have asked you. I started to snicker a little bit, picturing his underwear cut in half, hanging lopsided on his skinny behind. But this is really the right thing to do. You know how much I hated it when Dad always had to leave Mom's house to get his change of clothes from Aunt Eleanor's house. I'd see the hurt look in my mother's eyes. Even worse, he had often have Aunt Eleanor bring them to him no matter what time of the day it was. She loved taking care of all of Dad's things. It gave her further control and information on his whereabouts. Besides, I grinned from ear to ear. As the new, even more wild pictures entered my mind, I decided it would be good to share washing all of your laundry, folding and ironing with Diane. Just think, that will cut my wash load in half. When I started laughing out loud, Mark probably wondered what on earth was happening to me. I stared at his crotch area. I blinked my right eye and my left eye, and my right eye opened and shut several times. Let's see now. Who did you sleep with last? Are you wearing the right or the left side of your shorts? Some of his father's wives had to deal with a sister wife who was very much like Aunt Eleanor. Every plural family has to have one more antagonist. Mark often mocked. That's how women get tested and refined, you know. After all my laughter and explanations, Mark conceded, even though he really didn't want his clothes divided or cut in half. For the first time in years, I went to Dr. Fulton's office. He was back with a degree from Oregon, and we spent a few minutes catching up on our lives and what was going on in our huge plural families. I hadn't asked him for help since he delivered Alan, but for quite some time, I had vaginal pain and itching that was driving me crazy. It's a yeast infection, Sophia, the doctor matter-of-factly told me. What's a yeast infection? I asked, feeling pretty stupid. He sounded like I should know the terminology. It's a fungus. When the normal bacteria in the vagina gets out of control, it causes a kind of discomfort you are describing. But don't worry, dear, it won't kill you. It's totally curable. Then he looked puzzled about my naivety. You said you've never had this before? Never? It's awful. How could I have forgotten something like this? How long have you been married now? Just over 8 years. Why? Oh my, Dr. Fulton said in a worried voice. You just told me Mark took another wife recently. Yes, but what does that have to do with all of this? What it has to do is your man probably gave it to you because his peen was in another woman's peen and her pH might not work with your pH. But let's see what the doctor said. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Candida, Candida, is often carried by men. A man may or may not have any symptoms of the yeast infection, but he can pass it from one wife to another. As soon as I left the examination room, I rushed into the bathroom to hide my self-conscious, shameful tears. All the way home, I seethed with rage. Not only did I have to deal with blatant knowledge that Mark and Diane had sex, now I had to deal with the reality that his penis had picked up a yeast infection from her vagina and deposited it into mine. Just thinking about it made me nauseous. All the way home, I heard Dr. Fulton's words again. There's not much that can be done to prevent these sexually transmitted infections or diseases from happening in plural families. Cleanliness may help, but still may not stop the fungus from being passed back and forth. I guess the only way to stop spreading it is celibacy or the use of a condom. When I finally got the courage to tell Mark what the doctor had said, he felt bad, but he didn't know what to do about it either. Just stop having sex with Diane. I was just fine until you married her, I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I'm sorry. I always make sure I'm clean, Sophia, Mark said. Maybe you could talk to Diane about it and have her get some medication to clear it up. I don't care how clean you are. You and I have been married for 8 years, and I've never once had this infection before now. You brought this infection to me. It's sick and it's disgusting. You better use a condom with Diane from now on or don't have sex with me ever again. By then, I was sobbing. Oh, wow. I thought she said this in her head. I guess she said this out loud. My body was violated, and my soul feels... What? And my soul feels discarded. Not one single thing feels decent about you screwing another woman. Nothing about this feels holy, righteous, or sacred to me. No matter the rolling tension, I continued with every effort I could to muster to live in a pleasing way before God. In many polygamous families I knew, sister wives seemed to be happy and close. I too desired to be a perfect sister wife. When it was my night with Mark, I invited Diane and her adorable daughter to eat meals, watch television, and hang out upstairs with us. That's the same mess Mary did, and it got Mary out, so you shouldn't do it. Mary did that with the bird, and the bird slowly worked her way in there, and then Cody stopped coming over. So you messing up, girl. When it was Diane's night with Mark, the basement door was shut and locked to let me and my children know where we were to stay. So why do you continue to overextend yourself when she's shown you that she's not going to do the same? Occasionally, when my boys or I wanted or needed to go downstairs to get something from our fruit room, Mark would crack the door open an inch or so, as if we might see an orgy if it were fully open. Then he'd impatiently ask what we wanted. After too many months of rejection, I told Mark how hurtful it was to the boys and me. It feels like a slap right in the face when you quickly shut and lock the door while I'm still standing there. I don't shut the door in your face, he responded. I shut it to let you know not to come in or come downstairs. It might seem selfish, but that's the way Diane needs and wants it to to be. I'm going to support her wishes for a while. It looked and felt like I had encouraged Mark to marry a replica of Aunt Eleanor, and he was going along with Diane like my father always went along with Aunt Eleanor. I was worried and disheartened. Still, I was sure Diane would have some compassion and understanding about our displaced feelings and would compromise. After a few days of stomach aches and worry, I got brave enough to talk to her. I explained how unfair it seemed and how much their decision hurts. You've had him all to yourself for 8 years, she replied. Now it's my turn to have some alone time with him. Yeah, back to what I said last chapter. I don't like Diane. I don't, and I don't trust her. Because for you to sit there and say that, that doesn't have anything to do with the situation. You're coming in, whether or not she had 8 years or not is irrelevant. But this is what happens sometimes with these marriages when you have selfish people who are just out for themselves and use the guise of religion as to why they're doing the things that they're doing. I didn't believe Diane's attitude and justification was the accepted norm in plural marriages I've heard of, at least in the group. But I found it was common for men in the independent group to abandon their old wives for a given amount of time, claiming it was to give their new brides more time with him, to get to know him better. When neither Diane nor Mark's way of thinking changed, my gloom and disillusionment lingered, but my ego reminded me these selfish events can go both ways, you know. I got busy planning all sorts of games and paybacks. I could imagine a zillion ways to win, but it didn't matter how hard my ego tried to suck me into war. My heart and soul knew better. All the fighting would do is cause more rivalry and more conflict with me. I would have been very disappointed in myself if I had conducted myself the way I was tempted to. But it's nothing wrong with you not allowing her child to impose on your time anymore. Within a few months, Diane proudly informed me she had morning sickness. I gave her a hug and told her I was happy for her. I really was, no matter how hard things were. I still loved and treasured Diane. It wasn't her fault my insides were on fire. Yes, it was. At least her sickness was just in the morning. With her happy news, I began to feel nauseous all day long. Why did that proof of her relationship with Mark make one bit of difference to me? Everyone on this planet knows conception usually requires intercourse. After all, that's what polygamy is all about. Yeah, girl, you knew it was going to happen once you got that yeast infection that you were told you got. Mark was required to have intercourse with multiple women to help populate his own kingdom with pure blood. He was required to have an abundance of special children who were born under the covenant of plural marriage. After several days of sequestered melancholy, accompanied with guilt for having bad feelings, I forced my way back to my busy life. No matter what or how I felt, I smiled, I grinned and smiled. I beamed so damn much sometimes. My jaws ached and the skin on my cheeks felt like it would explode right off my face. When Diane was about 5 months along, she started bleeding. After running some tests, her obstetrician said she had a complication called placenta previa. Oh, that's dangerous. She's going to have to go to the hospital to have that baby. Diane was told to take it easy or she would lose the baby. When the bleeding still didn't stop after several weeks of rest, Diane was ordered to stay completely down until her infant was born. The little red devil jumped on my left shoulder and nudged me with his three-pronged pitchfork, saying, "Oh, this is good, Sophia. This is really good. You can have some peace of mind for the next 4 or 5 months because Mark and Diane can't be together." Of course, I didn't get my reprieve. I was worried from the get-go and couldn't bear the thought of Diane's sadness if she were to lose her baby. And unless one of her other mothers or sisters came over to visit, I seldom got a break. Not one person asked me if I would be Diane's nurse and her daughter Carrie's caregiver for the duration of her pregnancy. The responsibility was just plain expected of me as her sister wife. It was an automatic given with everyone, including myself. I was good at serving. After all, my whole life's purpose was to have a bunch of children and graciously attend to everyone. It would surely get me closer to heaven. I was grateful to show my love for Diane by helping her with her needs, but at the same time, I resented some of the demands and pressure. Yeah, because why can't your husband help since that's his wife? I'm just saying. Though I hated doing it, I quit teaching at private school, enrolled Jake and Alan in local public school in November, and commence my duties. I served Diane meals, rinsed out warm washcloths over and over again for her sponge baths, and emptied her bedpan. Then I fed, bathed, and cared for our kids before I could finally get them in bed for the night. I get a few winks and start all over again the next day. Some nights when I was so tired I could hardly move, I just cried myself to sleep. Sharing my husband with another woman was not what I had thought it would be. I wondered how many of my sisters and friends felt the same way I did, but like me, wouldn't dare talk about it. From day one, I knew the law of polygamy was surely devised by a male god. If it were up to a woman, it would have been the other way around. Instead of being married to our sister wives, we could be married to our brother husbands or be monogamous. But like everything else, I was committed to. I was passionate about serving our chauvinistic God. I wanted his love and his approval. Aside from being dutifully required to love my sister wife, I genuinely wanted to be kind, fair, friendly. Since Diane and I were living polygamy together, I hoped we would always love each other. So I did the best I could to care for her with love and compassion. Most of the time, I was sad for her. She was a newlywed, a young, energetic woman who had entered a very weird, dysfunctional, semi-established family. I tried to make time to visit with her and help her feel as comfortable as possible. It's funny how she still wanted to do that, even though she says something as inconsiderate as to you as you had him for 8 years. Now it's basically my turn, but you still want to overly serve her. I'm not that person. I'm just going to be honest, y'all, I'm not. As the days passed slowly, she felt more depressed with the burden she had to bear. I suggested she read, knit, embroider, and write. I recommended several more things she could do to help keep her mind off her situation, and felt frustrated when she chose to watch television all day and throughout the evening, which seemed to make her feel even worse. I was part of Mark's and my own huge polygamous families, yet much of the time I felt so alone, as if I had no family at all. Mom wasn't a social butterfly. She never had been. Whenever Aunt Eleanor or Aunt Amelia got their kids and grandchildren together, I was envious. By then, most of my dad's children had large plural families just as busy as ours. We seldom saw each other, and I longed for some sibling closeness my mother's family never seemed to have. Since Diane's dad, Kenneth, was a good friend to Mark, I secretly wished he would be welcomed as a part of Diane's family. It looked like they participated in each other's lives on a regular basis. After my fall canning season was over, I started making Christmas gifts for Diane, Carrie, and my kids. For Mark and our 3 boys, I sewed expensive looking denim jackets lined with sheepskin. When they were complete, I monogrammed their names on the back of each one with a bright orange thread. For gifts from our whole family, I sewed matching nightgowns for Diane, Carrie, both of Diane's mothers and her sisters, and her sister-in-law for her dad, brothers, and all our little boys. You're doing too much. You are doing too much. I made plaid country western shirts with snaps. On Christmas Eve, Kenneth and Mark carried Diane from the car into her mother Renee's house for the family Christmas party. The food was wonderful. I felt elated to be a part of Diane's family and grateful to present the pile of homemade gifts I created with love from the bottom of my heart. After that complete rush of joy, my boys and I watched Kenneth, his wives, and their children dole out elaborate, expensive gifts to each other and to Mark. In less than 5 minutes, I realized I was completely wrong. Mark had definitely become part of Diane's family, but his sons and I had not. So she's repeating the cycle, because in her family, her mother poured into the other kids, and the other wives had gifts for them and their families, and her kids didn't have any. And here we go. Now here's Sophia. Her kids aren't having any, and they're looking out for Mark. Okay, maybe you didn't have to get her a gift, but you couldn't get one for her 3 kids? And Mark's not going to see anything wrong with this, I'm sure. Back at home, I stayed up until 4:30 in the morning, stuffing socks, finishing the last minute things for our family, and setting out a few more simple gifts I made for Mark. By morning, I was physically and emotionally exhausted from having pushed myself way too hard for far too many days and nights. I went downstairs for our family Christmas anyway. After Mark and the kids opened their few inexpensive gifts, there were two large unmarked boxes to be opened. Mark pushed the largest one over to Diane. She opened it and was clearly elated about her new TV. She smiled at me excitedly. "Now you can have your television back," she said. The family could hardly wait to see what Mark had purchased for me. We watched in dismay as he retrieved and set that box on Diane's lap. She screamed with delight, realizing she also had a new VCR to go along with her new television. My stomach heaved up to my throat and my heart surged with pain. Before Diane or Mark could see my crimson face and my tears, I got my boys busy disposing of the brown paper bags we used as wrapping paper. Oh my goodness. Sky and Carrie played with the few simple toys they received from Santa while Jake, Alan, and I despondently went back upstairs. Of course, my boys noticed the inequalities at Diane's family's party and here in our own home, too. Like their mother, they wondered why. Their resentment resounded in 9-year-old Jake's angry words. "If Dad hadn't married Aunt Diane, we would have a good Christmas, and we would have things we need and want. And Dad would still take us places and do things with us like he used to." Alan mumbled with tears in his eyes. "It's not fair." Normally, I would have defended Mark's actions, decisions, and anger, second marriage. I would say those things should be important in this life. Your dad is going to do his best he can to provide for us. We're living God's laws, which are more important than anything else in the world. But my feelings were similar to Jake and Alan's. Not one single rebuttal came to my mind that time around. Y'all, I'm going to be honest. He wouldn't like me because I'm not one, if you haven't figured it out, to mince my words. Now, I'm not going to be disrespectful, but I'll let you know that I didn't like that, or I was disappointed, or why is it that I didn't get anything? Wow, he didn't even give her anything? I felt like I was going mad. All I wanted to do was go to sleep and not wake up for months, but daytime sleep wasn't an option at our house. I put on my comfortable sweats and jogged down the path to Swade's house. After 2 hours, I still couldn't make myself get up and go back home. My disgraceful emotions were too much to deal with. If I tried to talk to Mark, we'd just end up in another fight and I'd be wrong again. Even my mother would agree with Mark. "Your feelings are very selfish, Sophia. You need to nip them in the bud right now before the evil spirits cause you even more depraved thoughts and take advantage of you." There was no way I could make myself nip it in the bud. Besides, I hate that cliche with passion. I don't know why, but I always have. Diane didn't seem one bit grateful for anything I did for her. She didn't even thank me for the Christmas presents I made for her and her family. My resentment lingered. Since Diane couldn't go out with Mark every other Friday night like we had started doing, I told him it wasn't fair for us to go on our Friday nights either. Girl, you stupid. Because I would have been going out with him on my Friday nights. Why wouldn't you go? Especially after how you've been treated. It's like, just how much keeping sweet can she do? But this goes back to the way that they're taught. Because she thought that by her doing this and by her suppressing her feelings and not letting it out to him, that she would make it to the kingdom. However, near the first part of January, I guess Mark decided he wanted to make up for Christmas iniquities. Even more, he must have known he should get quite soft-spoken. Everybody's sucker, recent Sophia out of the house before her cover-ups got the best of her. Mark asked Val's mom, Renee, to stay with Diane and Carrie. I got another sitter for our boys, and we finally went out for dinner and a movie together. When we got home, Mark stayed downstairs way too long trying to console Diane. She felt devastated we went out while she couldn't. So once again, we put our lives on hold. In February, Diane delivered her chunky little miracle at the LDS hospital. All the necessary emergency equipment was ready in case a cesarean section was required. But thank God, the baby's head pushed the placenta aside as it entered the birth canal. Okay. 3 or 4 days after she came home with her adorable little son, Her Aunt Renee, Val's mom, came to see her and the baby. After a while, she took me to the side to talk. Thank you for being a supportive and loving sister wife to Diane. She says you've been treating her a lot better lately. I'm so grateful you finally gave in to the idea you have to share your husband equally. First of all, she's always treated her good. So what do you mean? Because she waited on her hand and foot, she's been treating her a lot better? I'm so grateful you finally gave into that idea you have to share. These things take time, and you're finally learning how to be a good sister wife. Completely bewildered by her insult and falsehood, I couldn't say a word in my own defense. When Renee finished her sweet tongue lashing, my thank you was insincere. What on earth had Diane told her to cause her to have such a dreadful opinion of me? How could Diane have one thing to complain about me? Exactly. Maybe it was because our original long visits had to be nipped in the bud so I could get other things accomplished, or Mark and I had gone on a date once in 5 months. Renee's belief in Diane's words and opinions broke my heart. Her comments haunted and angered me until I set off a tangent of my own. My hurt turned to anger. For nearly 6 months previous, and ever since Diane married Mark, my life had been a zoo. She should have been grateful I encouraged Mark to marry her, or she might not have been with him. I'd done everything I could to show my love to her and her beautiful little daughter. Most of my time had been devoted to her feelings, her needs, her wishes. Often Mark and I avoided sex so she wouldn't hear us and feel even worse. But you can hear them, so why y'all worried about avoiding it? I quit teaching at our private school and put my kids in public school, which I hated to do. I seldom went anywhere with my mother and friends or kids. Even worse, I seldom heard one thank you come out of her mouth. Even after I became the good wife and continued to take care of Diane and Carrie, her new baby, I didn't feel appreciated. What on earth could Diane have honestly complained about other than her own malady? Since I wasn't able to nip the bud from Diane's self-centeredness, I swore I would never again give in to her or help her. When it was Mark's night with her, he had to take care of his wife and his new baby. I took my boys and Carrie sleigh riding. We built snowmen and visited with friends. I left our big cold house as much as I possibly could. Poor Diane. She probably didn't understand why I suddenly fell from my pedestal as a supportive and loving sister wife and reverted back into the selfish sister wife I apparently had been for so long before. I'll be honest, I don't blame her. I would have been like, peace. Anyways, y'all, let me know what you thought of those 2 chapters and what do we think of Diane? Tell me that. Until next time.